Housing Authority regular Board of Commissioners meeting. Gwen, can you call the roll?
Yes, Eric Ron,
Yes.
Valerie Crutchfield. Here. Susan Ellinger. Susan is here. Susan? Right, you're muted.
I'm here. I'm
Here.
Right. Patricia was going to be on, but I don't see her.
Here.
White House? Yeah.
Present.
Go. We have four.
We have any visitors that we need to recognize tonight?
Jacqueline Williams, Riley Glenwood Towers.
Harrison Ellenwood is with Carolina Project Equities with our bond resolutions. And Charles, I don't see Charles. He was going to be on.
All right. Our next agenda item is public comment. Do we have any participants that would like to make a public comment?
This is Paula, and I'd like to make a public comment.
All right, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all too, but I've been having difficulty to get heard. So I've had a informal meeting with some of the staff, and they've not gotten back to me since then, and it's been a couple of months. Also, I had requested to have the refrigerator raised for medical reasons, and I have submitted an ADA compliance form now, and they are just today acknowledging that, which I think is because it's a board meeting night. So I've had a severe injury because of this, and it had not been, it's just wasn't taken care of prior to this injuries happening now, causing it. So, I'd like to get things addressed when they need to be and results, and not RHA just denying any liability for anything. Now I find that the landscaping maintenance department has, in mowing the lawn at the center island, has also banged into my vehicle and put a dent in it. And I want to know who is the landscaping company so I can address it to them, or is it RHA? And I'm not going to be just lumped with it. Things happen, you're a tenant, therefore you just get ignored. That's not going to work anymore. Please.
Okay. Paula, did you hear that? Ashley is going to make sure that is followed up with through the Housing Operations Department.
And what about the informal meeting they demanded to have, and when I requested a formal hearing? They've done nothing since that date in response of any of that. They just denied everything.
Okay, well, I'm asking right now for Ashley and his staff to just follow up with you on that. And if you're not satisfied, you're welcome to let us know.
Terrific. And I do want that follow-up in paper print, not a computer, because I don't know how to access that portal that they forced me to do and denied my ADA rights on that.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Is there anyone else that would like to make a public comment? Hearing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and may be enacted by one motion and a second. If a commissioner requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda, it shall be removed and considered as a separate item. The vote will be a roll call vote. Right. Oh, I'm sorry.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
All right, Eric Braun,
Yes.
Valerie Crutchfield,
Yes.
Susan Ellinger,
Yes.
Arnie Morris,
Yes.
Greg Warren,
Yes.
Joe Whitehouse.
Yes.
The consent agenda has been adopted.
Right, that brings us to the report of the board chair, and I have a couple of things I'd like to report on. We had a really excellent meeting with Mayor Janet Cowell today, and gave her an update on some of the things we've been working on. She was very supportive and was eager to continue finding ways for the housing authority and for the city to find ways to work together and to leverage our collective resources. So it's just a productive meeting, and we appreciate the mayor making time for us because she's extremely busy. I also wanted to thank RHA and Gwen in particular. We had a Raleigh Ford, Wake Up Wake County. We jointly sponsored a meeting with the National Civic League on emerging engagement tools, and we used the RHA's community room, and it was well attended. We had about 55 people in attendance. We had the mayor there, another city councilor, and it was, I thought it went really well. So we appreciate that. And the same group, along with City Builders, is also sponsoring a screening in the community room on April 3rd for a movie called Fault Lines. And it's interesting. It explores kind of all sides of the fight for more affordable housing in San Francisco. But a lot of the issues and themes are transferable to our community. And so, and that's a free program, and it's open to the public. So if anybody is interested in attending, it's April 3rd from 6 to 8. And then I want to just thank Ashley and his team. We're going to hear about some good things that have happened recently, and it's really because of him and the hard work of staff that a lot of these positive things have been going on. And I know you've had lots of things to deal with, lots of challenges, but I feel like we're really making great progress. So I wanted to just thank everybody in advance. And with that, I will turn it over to Ashley.
Thank you. So in my report tonight, I'll make a variety of comments on a variety of topics. Some of it is news, some of it is just reporting on how things have gone through the year, especially from the perspective of our residents. The first, oh no, if you can go to the content slide there. So I'm going to cover these topics. I've got some big news that I want to share. If you're going to go to the first slide, Gwen.
I know, Ashley didn't pull that.
Like those curtains, can we have it again?
That's really good.
So we have now officially received a credit rating. It's still confidential in the sense that it's not public. From Standard & Poor's, an A+ rating, which is the highest that an agency of our size can get. And this is probably one of the most significant achievements, in the last 10 years for the agency. is a game changer, especially given our strategic plan to reposition all of our assets as well as acquire and develop new. Want to briefly share some examples of housing authorities' use of bond issuances. So we will be able to issue our own general revenue bonds with this credit rating. And we'll be able to go straight to the bond market and place our debt. The Everett Housing Authority is where I last worked, and also where Wendy Blaine worked. We borrowed 15-year debt for a project, 100% loan to value, to acquire a 381 unit property for $120 million, using these bonds. And despite the 100% loan to value, the cash flow from this property in the first year. Another example is Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority. Last year, they did about 4 bond issuances, so very active, but this is an example of where they loan bond proceeds to the tax credit partnership for $27.6 million project, 180 units, and it's a 4% new construction project. And so the housing authority loaned the proceeds to the partnership with a slightly higher interest rate than it could borrow, so it also benefited from that. The King County Housing Authority, the other housing authorities I worked for in 2020, this I believe was in 2022 or 2021. They used lines of credit that they had to purchase 5 workforce properties, 722 units, $52 million in bond proceeds for permanent financing for these. In this case, they did also receive some funding from a philanthropist to help this deal work. But these are the kinds of things that we will be able to do, not having now received the credit rating. So Gwen, if you could skip that next slide, and then we can go to the one that says the fiscal year 2026 HUD budget. Oh, you got it. Okay, great. So one of the things about this year's budget that, you know, is even more more uncertain and unstable is the new administration that has come in with very different ways that they are operating. The housing authorities, depending on federal government funding, are always subject to uncertainty. The federal government has not passed a budget on time, meaning by September 30, for, you know, way more than a decade or two. And so they always rely on a continuing resolution to get the government funded without getting shut down. This administration so far, one of the things that has affected us, or almost affected us, was a temporary pause in all of our funding. And then, of course, they also, the Congress passed and the president signed into law a continuing resolution. He signed that on March 15. Continuing resolution usually goes for, you know, 30 days, maybe 3 months, but this was a continuing resolution that funds the government for the entire year. So, so this continuing resolution idea is for the entire year is is rarely used. And then this temporary pause, of course, in providing funding to all of the agencies that it funds, was completely new. And we received the OMB letter and the notice that all of our funding would be paused immediately on the same day, by the afternoon. That temporary pause on the Section 8 program was lifted, so on the same day, and then within 24 hours, public housing was lifted. Don't quite know what this says about all of it, but one can speculate that one is that the Section 8 program always has a priority, and that public housing was also prioritized. So the continuing resolution that was passed exceeded in amounts both what the House proposed and what the Senate proposed in their budget. The House proposed a total of 7.5% cut. The Senate proposed some minor cuts, but essentially a level budget. The continuing resolution that was finally agreed to was level funding, and that means level funding from the previous year, which is that level funding is better than both what the Senate proposed as well as the HUD, as well as the House. The House, as I said, proposes 7.5% cut. All of the programs were level funded, except the Section 8 program was also subject to what is known as an anomaly in the continuing resolution. And this anomaly was essentially that the Section 8 program needed more than level funding. And so there was an additional $3 odd billion added to the Section 8 budget. So very far from where the House started. So where we are in terms of our budget, the budget that Liz is going to present is a budget based on level funding in some cases and an increase in funding marginal in the Section 8 program. So looking forward, this administration is fairly unpredictable, but what we do know is that HUD has been ordered to cut their staffing in half, so that will have an impact. So things may be approved and processed more slowly, but that will have some impact. But we don't know what that impact would be right now. For federal fiscal year 2026, when September 30 rolls around, it is highly unlikely that a budget will be passed at that time. But I think what we can expect is that for the federal fiscal year 2026 will be less generous than this year. So it's within this environment and within this context that we put our budget together.
Can we ask some questions now about that?
Sure.
So that's, in essence, pretty good news, right? That we've got level funding.
Level funding is
Right.
good news this year.
So, yeah, I get that. I think a lot of what we deal with now are also regulatory in nature, that may be administrative, particularly related to our conversions away from public housing. And do you have any sense as to whether or not any brakes might be put on regulatory actions for what we're trying to do to move our portfolio out of public housing into, and plus the fact we now are going to have less HUD people, I think.
Yeah.
And therefore we can expect longer processing times and how, do you have any further thoughts about that?
Okay, so there's, there was a conference in Goldsboro last week, and HUD staff were supposed to show up and provide information, and they didn't show up because they are under directions not to talk and to share anything. So in many ways, we are in the dark about what's going to happen. There are some, some information coming out that HUD wants to, the administration wants to consolidate smaller housing authorities into larger regional housing authorities, as well as consolidate their offices to larger regions. But as far as these programs that we are hoping to make use of are concerned, we don't know, and we haven't heard about what the impacts may be. And so we'll wait and see, but we will push forward with the initiatives that we have started and that we want to start. So the Glenwood RAD Section 18 application, we're moving forward and acting based on a belief that will, that will happen. So we don't want to wait until we find things out and then have to restart. I think it's best for us to just move forward based on our strategic plan and what we want to do, and then adjust when the information suggests that we should.
Do we have any outstanding HUD approvals on heritage that could
Yes.
impact our?
So we have made a request to HUD after receiving our disposition approval. That approval gives us the ability to then request the tenant protection vouchers. So we have requested those tenant protection vouchers, and the application has moved from, or the request, it's not an application, has moved from the field office in Goldsboro to headquarters. And Ken says yes.
I just want to, you're saying Goldsboro, do you mean Greensboro?
Greensboro, sorry.
I just didn't know if something changed and they were consolidating.
That's a good question.
He's a new guy around here.
They moved into a bar lot in Goldsboro. So,
That wouldn't be surprised either, unfortunately.
Good on that.
I think so. Thanks.
Okay, so I do want to talk a little bit about the voucher funding. We know that we are, as of now, we are in shortfall, meaning we can't issue any more vouchers. Now, we don't have any more vouchers to issue because we reached 101%, and so now HUD, until further notice, we can't issue vouchers, which is okay because we're at the maximum anyway. But in terms of budget, I just wanted to kind of walk through some numbers here that the board might be interested in. So our budget authority for rental assistance, housing assistance payments last year was $40.5 million over this current fiscal year. And then we had $3.8 million in reserves. Now, at some point early, it was in May, HUD yanked some of those reserves, and less than $500,000 of those reserves. But nevertheless, the total available to us for the program last year was $44.3 million. And we actually paid out $45.8 million, which is $1.5 million more. So HUD provided us with additional funding, which then makes up our next budget authority for the new year. It should say 2026 budget authority. Is $47.5 million, which is significantly above that $40.5 million that we started out at. Now, HUD is also projecting, and this should say 2026, projecting that we will spend $51.7 million. Even though we have our budget authority is 47. So we expect as the program shrinks to a lower level that we will still end up needing additional shortfall funding, which we would then bring us to $51.7 million. And one of the things I just wanted to point out is that that amount is $7.4 million more than where we were at with what was available in last year at $44.3 million. So the way that the Section 8 program managed itself this year and achieved in terms of utilization, operating the program that way may mean an additional $74 million that we would have extended. So what the program did put the housing authority in a position to attract almost $75 million in new funding over the next 10 years.
And is that related to our utilization rate?
Because of our utilization rate, yeah. And so, so right now, we're not issuing vouchers, but the funding that, what HUD is projecting is that we're going to be needing additional funds, and that there's, again, shortfall funds that are in the budget, so we will benefit from that.
And our utilization rate is,
our utilization rate right now is probably right around 100%. So we lose, on the average, roughly 20 people from the program. If that goes down, we'll end up being in shortfall longer.
How you guys doing over there?
Correcting his slide. For the record.
Oh.
Quick question. Given that we're using more than 100% of our Section 8 dollars, does that at all limit our ability to do project-based assistance?
No.
I mean,
It would to some extent, but so in this fiscal year, in this calendar year, the program will go down by about 200 to 220 vouchers. So we'll lose that many vouchers now. And that happens essentially every single year, 200 to 220 vouchers.
Because of cost increases, because of fair market rent increases, or why do we lose them?
No, because participants just move on for one reason or
Right,
another.
right,
So
right.
it's fairly predictable
Right.
that just over 200 people leave the program
Right,
every year.
okay.
And as a result, we'll be able to project based. Now, that does not impact our ability to project based, but new vouchers that we get, say for Glenwood, which we will get about 250 vouchers, tenant protection vouchers. We'll get 111, 112 at Heritage Park. We can project based over 100%, so we don't have any restrictions there.
So I'm just wondering, given that there are some limits to project basing, so you're carefully allocating project-based dollars to external developers, but making sure that we've got enough for our own portfolio, right?
Oh yeah, we'll have enough for our own portfolio, because what we'll project based in our own portfolio are the tenant protection vouchers, and then so annually we will be able to generally be able to project base up to 200 vouchers. But often, we've got projects that are not in construction yet, and so those will be a couple of years down the road when those vouchers.
I don't know if you're going to talk more about project-based elsewhere in the agenda.
No.
All right, so I guess I'll just ask one more question. You have a lot of interest in project-based vouchers from external developers, right? You have an RFP out.
Right.
Yeah. And
We have an RFP out right now
Yeah.
that we're evaluating
And you won't be able to fund all of those requests, is that correct?
No, because we limited it to 90 vouchers.
Okay, all right, but you have many more requesting than that.
We've got 15 applications, something to that effect. And, so way more than, yeah, the demand is high.
Scarce resource then.
It's a very scarce resource.
Good, just wanted to.
And people are really finding out about it.
Yeah.
And they're,
So, let me move on. I just want to share some Heritage Park news that most people know about, but our Section 18 disposition was approved. Tenant protection vouchers were requested, so we're waiting on those. Congratulations to the team for getting a 9% application with a perfect score. So that will make give a boost to the chances that we will get the award. We are planning a 4% application August of 2025. And if whether the 9% gets funded or not, if it's not, then the 4% application will just be for a larger number of units, around 170. And congratulations to our relocation team and all the folks who made this happen, including project-based vouchers. We now only have 10 households that remain at the program, at Heritage Park. In additional news about development, we have an underwriter position that has been filled, and that will be starting in April.
can I ask a question, just to make sure I'm clear? So how much closer are we to getting the 9% application approved? Were there a lot of perfect scores? Were there just a few perfect scores? Were there more perfect scores?
There are 7 in Wake County. So those would be the ones that we would be competing against directly.
And how many projects or how
We'll
many?
probably only get 2 in Wake County at most. The tiebreaker is gonna be key, and the tiebreaker this year is non-federal, non-public dollars in terms of having a soft money, a soft loan or grant from a non-public source. So that's something that we're working on for.
So that would increase our chances, but at this point, we don't have that. Or do we, or am I supposed to
Firm
ask?
commitment, but we have some strong interest.
Okay. Well, good. And then the 4% isn't just the backup, that will actually be used for
We're gonna do a 4% anyway.
regardless, and if we don't get the 9, then as you said, we'll just
We'll just
expand.
combine.
Just be a bigger.
Okay.
But this is, this is great news to be where we are now.
Oh, yeah, I
given
mean,
where-
Gotta have a perfect, gotta start with a perfect score, that's big steps.
With regard to Heritage Park and just 10 folks remaining, there's bound to be security issues, and I think you've got private security there, as I recall.
No, we've ended the private security. We have security cameras.
Okay. All right, so,
And I stay in contact with downtown district.
so are those 10 going to be difficult to move out?
I actually want to say it's 8 because we got some more keys this afternoon. So I don't know when you pulled your numbers. We did get a couple sets of keys this afternoon. At least 4 of these households already have a place lined up. They're just waiting for our maintenance team to get them ready for them. There's one person I think that is on the way out, and then the maintenance team has to go in. So they will be fairly easy to move. We have one individual who's trying to port to Orange County, who may take a little bit of time. She's trying to move over to the Chapel Hill area to be near her parents who are aging. And then there might be one other individual who would give us a little bit of a hard time. She goes back and forth and can't necessarily articulate exactly what she's looking for, but we're estimating that we'll be empty by the end of
So do we have any ability to move forward with demolition at this point in time?
We are.
No, with the 10 people there.
I understand, after those 10 are gone.
You know, we're working on a transition plan in general for the property in terms of working with our asset management team and our housing operations team to basically close down the property, provide, put up fencing, and we're working on the demolition.
Okay, because that's important to do pretty as fast, as quick as possible, I would
Right,
guess.
because we will get people.
It just becomes an eyesore, it's
Yeah.
a security.
So one of the initiatives related to our strategic plan that we are launching this year is we're proposing a new resident services department. We have 2 resident service coordinator positions. One is a new one. One will work with elderly households and other family households. The relocation team will be part of the resident services coordinator, will be part of the department. And then we are launching a new family self-sufficiency program that will serve up to 25 households, and folks from Heritage Park, where the former site will be targeted. I will at a later date talk a little bit more about the family self-sufficiency program, but our current service coordinator came from that program and became employed, became a homeowner, and so it has a program with a solid history. We will fund the family self-sufficiency coordinator from Section 8 admin reserves for the first 3 years of the program, with the idea that at some point HUD will make new slots available for their coordinator grants. And as part of this, Laura McCann will be promoted to Director of Resident Services. Laura is one of those people who does a lot, if not everything, right, and also focuses on the right things. So I want to just announce that, and she has done a great job on whatever she's worked with, especially with the relocation team, and all the other tasks that she has. So
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And if we could promote somebody else, we would promote Jennifer again, but we can't for her great work on
Good work.
I forgot about that. On the credit rating, it was a lot of work. And we can always rely on Jennifer to do things that nobody else has done in the past or in the agency. So I'm gonna, for the remainder of my time, I know I took a long time, I want to share some of the outcomes of our resident surveys and Section 8 participant surveys, because I think this is why we do this work, is to be of service to our residents. So one of the questions that we ask every year is, do you feel safe? And it's always the case that in the Section 8 program, residents feel safer than in public housing. But in public housing, there's been an increased sense of safety at the properties. And we don't really know kind of exactly what it is, but we've made some changes where to our housing operations program, where there's more accountability, where property managers have responsibility. The other value that is important to us is the quality of housing. Again, in Section 8, 93% of the residents are very satisfied with the quality of the housing. In public housing, just short of 78%. But again, this is not surprising. One of the questions that we ask from from a public housing residence is, do you want to, learn about or find out more about the future of your development? And 100% of them typically say yes. And so this just points to the fact that we're in the right direction with repositioning these properties and improving them as places to live to make sure that they're safer and the quality is higher. So this is the graph that shows the percentage of people who really want to know about the future of their community. In section 8, this is the only category where in section 8 it falls below 90% is returning calls in a timely way. Is something that we're working on, big improvement over the previous year. One of the values that we hold is that of respect. That in everything that we do, we want to make sure that our residents and our clients are respected. And in housing management, that's at a high level, way over 90% last year, and still over 90% this year. So thank you to the folks in housing management. And again, on the section 8 side, I don't know what they have in the water over there, but the section 8 folks, deliver high quality services and are very respectful in their interactions. And I would say that that the success that the program had over the last year, to the culture in that program, as well as the high level of respect that the staff have for the client. So I'm going to stop there and say thank you to the staff.
2026 is going to be tough though. Far up. That's your report.
That's the report.
Anything else there before we move on? Do we have a report of the Real Estate Investment Committee Chair?
The only report I have is that we're probably going to have a meeting coming up.
Lots of things to talk about.
Lots of things to talk about. So stay tuned for those who are on that committee.
All right, Commissioner comments.
Good evening, this is Joe, and I just want to sort of ditto a lot of things that have been said this evening already, but I just want to congratulate the whole authority on reaching the credit rating that was produced, as well as I would say, Laura, congratulations on your promotion as well.
Any other commissioner comments?
I second Joe's comments. This is Susan.
Thank you. Again, we definitely appreciate the staff and what Ashley's doing and setting the bar high. Got to keep going. Well, thank you. That brings us to new business and resolution number 11. Preliminary approval to issuance of multifamily housing revenue bonds.
Ashley, who did you want me to present the budget?
Budget.
I don't think it's on there.
Why don't we hold off on the resolution?
Okay.
And let Liz do the budget, and then we'll come back. And you're welcome to stay at the table. We got plenty of seats. That's okay.
I know you all are waiting to.
Yeah. Well, we reviewed it.
We definitely didn't want to get this out on opportunity to present.
I'm fine with that if y'all are good with that, but this way we'll have less questions on Monday when we actually.
You think?
All right, so Ashley did in his presentation go over some of the points. I'm gonna kind of breeze through those that I saw that he mentioned, but I did want to say as we get into this, so this is the background information, which he did mention some of this. I'm just gonna kind of skip that. I was talking about the continuing resolution but I will kind of go through some of the budget assumptions. So, budget assumptions for the public housing operating funds, we've assumed 95% proration. This is the same that we used last year. We actually finished our calendar year 24 at 97.12. And this is unofficial because we never got the final letter from HUD, but by our calculations, that's what we finished at. And so currently for the first quarter of this year, our proration has been at 95%. So based on the continuing resolution and everything to remain level, we have implemented the 95% again, moving into this next year. And then for the HCV program, the budget assumed last year we used 92% proration with a 97.5% utilization. And this year we are using the admin tool that they provide for us. And because of that is assuming a 91% proration for the HCB admin fees and a 99.2% voucher utilization for the HCB program. So that is what our budget is going to be reflecting. And we forgot to update this, but you'll see later that we are actually changing our estimate for the bond income. Jennifer has looked at the bond deals that are currently in place, and if everyone were to close timely, I think it was calculated to be about 2 million. And so we had originally thought we would put 1.5 million in here, but after talking it through and based on some things being unsettled in the market, we are lowering that. And you'll see that later in our presentation to $1 million, which is about 50% of where we're hoping to be if all the deals close timely. And then for the investment interest rates, we are using a 3.5% interest rate across the board. Now this does fluctuate anywhere between 3 to 4%. And the CCC, and I said that wrong, our business activities actually earns the 10% management fee rates from our nonprofit. The CCC earns management fees from our capital fund and our HCB program. All right. Again, this slide I share yearly, and I think it's important just to kind of see when we are budgeting all the different time periods that we have to consider. The federal fiscal year being October through September, but with all the continuing resolutions, we never really have firm numbers from them when we are budgeting, as well as our public housing and HCB funding. The year that they use for that is on a calendar year basis. And then our mod rehab program has a funding year of December to December. And then capital fund can vary year to year. We have had it as early as February, and sometimes it can go as late out as August. So as we're budgeting, we have to consider this and just kind of look historically what the trend has been for some of these funds and go with that. And then for our RHA, CAD, and OCAC fiscal year, currently we are dealing with April through March, but that too has been different if we have tax credits. So once we get tax credits again in our portfolio, those fiscal years can differ for our staff. Okay, Jim. All right, so the first budget that we're going to be looking at, and each of these budget presentations has our original approved budget, the revised budget as was approved in the consent agenda, and then the proposed 26 budget. And the last column is a variance between the revised budget and the proposed 26 budget. So I'm going to point out a few of these items, and then if you have questions, I'll pause at the end of each for you to ask. All right, so as I just pointed out in the budget assumptions, is that we're using the 95% proration for the income levels. We do expect to see a decrease in the Heritage Park income as the funding source will shift from subsidy to the asset repositioning fees. And also the federal fiscal year ended on September 30th. We don't expect a new budget to be in place by then. Optimistically, they would have a new budget in place by the end of the calendar year. If you will look at the extraordinary maintenance and operations line, we are showing about a $4 million for the budget, and in the variance, there's a 48% reduction. And the reduced amount is mostly due to an extraordinary increase that we saw in the current year for vacancy times and plumbing costs. And we are not anticipating that those extraordinary costs would continue into the new year. So we have reduced that budget. And then also notice on the protective service line, just right under it, that we are reducing that line approximately $400,000. And that was strictly related to the Heritage Park security guards that we had on site during that need. So overall, our budget projection is, I'm gonna pull it up on mine, I can't hardly read that. We're saying that we're projecting a $40,000 net income residual receipts. So I'm gonna pause there and see if anyone had any specific questions. So next, we're going to look at the Central Operating Cost Center. All right. From the revised budget, we are proposing an overall increase in income. And just to kind of break that down for you, the management fee income line includes capital fund grant CFP fees, and it also includes property management fee, and then it includes some HCV fees that we're allowed. So we are showing an increase on that line. Partly, one reason was due to a grant that was, the amounts were issued in the current year, but it is, they're not available yet in our HUD system. We are working to get the needed information added so that we can draw down those funds, and we expect that's going to be in the next couple of weeks. So that would fall into the new fiscal year. We are also, our property management fees can fluctuate, and that is based on occupied units. So that makes up some of the other differences in that management fee line. The fee for service income, you will notice that one has the largest increase, and mostly that is due to adding previously our landscaping staff of 4 were assigned to properties. But we are outsourcing part of our landscape duties. And so since those landscapers are not assigned specifically to properties, it's best that we bring them under our fees for service structure so that we can properly expense the properties that are using their services. And so they will be paying in the fees for services to cover those salaries. And that was approximately $450,000 in total for those positions. And let me just note there that the fee structure is set up to be the marketable rate. And if we were to go outside of the agency and bring in a contractor to do the work, we're allowed to charge up to market rate. So one thing we do plan to do in this upcoming year is have our procurement team go back out to market to get updated pricing to bring them more currently in line with what we should be charging. So that is why you see an increase in fees. There was also a new position of a carpenter that was added that would also fall under that structure. So with those three reasons, you're going to see the most increase on the income side. All right, and then the change in the expenses is, if you look at the employee expense line, we have an increase of $445,000. That was due to our revision actually lowered our expenses because we had some temporary staffing, which would show up on the second line of the admin expense. So the two of those netted together only show about a $200,000 increase. And part of this is just for a cost adjustment for employee expense that you'll be seeing there, as well as if there were any new positions added. All right, and if you look at our residual receipts at the bottom, we're expecting to have a net income of $26,283. So I'm going to pause and see if anyone has any questions there. I know this is exciting. It's
No,
hard
we're
to
good.
contain yourself.
Everything's positive at the end, at the bottom line, right? Yeah, how's that work?
Okay, and then we'll move on to the voucher program. And Ashley spoke a lot about the HAP income, and so I am not going to speak a lot about that. If y'all have questions, you can ask, but the HAP income is a flow through because you'll see the housing assisted payments in the expense section where it just flows through. So in total, we are showing a net income of $118,000 approximately. We are projecting a 91% proration with 99.2% utilization, which we determined by using the 2-year tool that HUD has put out there for us. And there wasn't huge change in the expenses if you net it all together. So I think it was about $150,000, and that's just due to a small inflation factor we may have included, as well as a cost adjustment in the employee expense line. So that one's pretty easy to present. Does anyone have any questions on this one? Oh, and let me do say that we did change the tenant services due to no longer needing that owner incentive. I think in the current year we had higher owner incentive, but being as how we're 100% leased now, there's the need for that should go down for the next year. Okay, so local budget or business activities as it's headed. Again, we spoke about in the beginning for the budget assumptions. You'll see here the $1 million for the bond fee income. And this is where the majority of the total income increase is coming from. And then for the employee expense, again, our expenses were showing increase from the budget revision of about $485,000. And down here to my notes, that was due to the alignment. We had some alignment of some employee salaries. And what I mean by this is the administrative staff that we hire, we have to allocate it according to their job task. And so there was some alignment occurring to, as I mentioned earlier, the management fees for CAD and OCAD go into business activities, where the management fee for the public housing and HCB program go into the CCC. So a lot of the administrative staff can spend time doing business for the housing authority, but also for CAD and OCAC. So there was some alignment of the salary allocations based on those tasks. So you do see some increase there as well as due to the cost adjustment. And then on the general expense line, we included no, that was last year that we included, the current year we included the S&P, right? Yes, okay. So there was a reduction on the general expenses because that was a one-time expense in the current year, so there is a decrease there. All right, I'll pause there and ask, is there any questions?
Or did I understand you say that you're gonna reduce the bond fee income?
We did, from what we are calculating it based on the current, we had calculated a potential of 2 million and, just not knowing when those could close, if that could get pushed back, we're coming in at the 50% of that 2 million.
So is it 1.5 then, still?
No, it's $1 million. On the new,
I'm sorry, I have the one you sent out earlier. Yeah.
right, the one I sent out was 1.5.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Which we thought was still conservative, but just based on, you know, how
Fine.
things are going, we
That's
were
fine.
wanted to be a little more conservative.
Right.
And we're still showing a income of 168,000 even by lowering it to the 1 million.
We can still spend it if it comes in above that number.
I understand. More people.
So one of the, our development department is
Funded through that.
funded through the local.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Liz, this is Joe. I have a question. The employee expense you were talking about, it looks like it's increased about, I don't know, above 35% for the year over last year. And that is, I was having a little trouble hearing. Could you explain to me a little bit more about why the big expense increase this year?
Yes, so that's partly due to the staffing whose portion of salary is coded to this program. We looked to see if those percentages were in line with the actual job duties that they are performing. Because if they're performing duties that are related to our OCAC or CAD program, they are getting paid from this budget versus the central cost center budget. So some allocations of the salaries were redistributed and realigned to make sure that they were following the job duties and what work was actually being performed. And so the percentages went up higher in this, for this program.
Is there an offset by other means of income for that? From those other activities that they're performing?
Offset of income. So
Well,
income comes through that management fee income line that you see up there.
Mhm.
And so these are duties that they would be performed that are covered by the management fee.
Okay, I was kind of looking at the increase then in management fees at 35,000, and we're over $500,000 increase on employee expense here, so it doesn't really offset.
And other costs, if you'll notice, is taking the variance from the revision column. And there were some staff that were not in place. As Ashley mentioned earlier, we've got an underwriter that was in the original budgeted amount, but we reduced that in the revised because that position was not hired in the current fiscal year. And so we are now having to put that salary back in because that position is going to come in the new year. So that is another change that would occur. And I'm trying to think, there were a few new positions and I'm trying to think if they would have a percentage that came out of housing operations. Do you recall if any of them had local? Yeah.
I believe that some folks, we determined that they should be paid for out of the local fund rather than the CCC. And then I can't see this very clearly, but you talk about the temporary services shifting, the employees who were temps, or did you put them all in?
I just talked about it on another one. This one wasn't as large. There's only about a 30,000 reduction on that admin expense line, but the actual temporary services could have been higher than the 30,000 because there could be some other fees or some other expenses that we're expecting to go down next year. So I don't have that exact number, but all of that plays into that employee expense line. When we use temp services, we're putting that on a separate line, which is just beneath that one.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
How many positions are in the development department now?
4 so far.
Is that including the vacancy that you're going to fill?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay, so we'll move to the OCAC properties. All right, so for there, if you'll notice, there is an increase in the total income of about 132,000 from the revised budget. The revised budget, we had actually lowered it, and that was due to our revenue being impacted by the Choice Mobility voucher issuance. The Choice Mobility gave tenant the right to request a tenant-based voucher after living at the property for 1 year after it became RAD property. And this gave us much higher vacancies than we had budgeted for. But as we move into the New Year's budget, we anticipate that because we are 100% leased right now, there will be no vouchers to give out, so there will be less unoccupied units moving into the new year. So the increase is 132,000. The expenses increase overall about 62,000, and that's mostly due to, again, a cost adjustment for employee expenses as well as a inflation factor that we accounted for on the ordinary maintenance line. So overall, we're expecting a proposed net income of $400,763. All right. This last screen is something that you will be voting on. As the RHA board, it is required that the RHA board approve the OCAC budget in the sense that there has to be oversight for the agency that we are making deposits into our replacement reserve account. And so that you could see how that is looking, we made this separate slide to show you where we ended last fiscal year for our replacement reserve balance, the deposits that have been made for the current year, along with the interest that was earned on those deposits, and then our ending balance, which is the next to the last column. And then that very last column is just showing what we project to put in the replacement reserves for the next year.
What is the ultimate amount we need in the replacement reserve, or what's the rule we have to
So we
operate?
had to do that we had a 20-year pro forma that we had to present at the time we were doing the conversion, and that amount was set in that pro forma.
And so once we hit that, we can stop putting the money in, or do we have to replenish
You'll
it?
be using it.
So you have to replenish it and keep it at that level.
It just states that we have to make a deposit into the replacement reserve, and it goes up by a percentage each year. So I imagine as we use it, we'll have to reallocate.
And that was based on that capital needs assessment that we had to do for the 20-year pro forma.
And since this was kind of our first RAD experience or effort, is everything kind of performing the way we expected, or in the neighborhood of what we expected?
Yeah, I think it's very positive that it's, you know, that property is cash flowing and, as that, as we were talking earlier, that it doesn't go into any Federal Reserve. So,
And the only maybe unexpected and maybe predictable factor was the turnover when their vouchers are available, because everybody in those units, they go right to the top of the waiting list. They don't have to get in line. So when their year is up and there's a voucher available and they ask for it, they get it. And so there were lots more vacancies this year.
And that's a common experience when in that scenario, you have that big bump and then
I think most
levels
people
out.
prefer to have the voucher.
Well, that's the case, but housing, the number of housing authorities with RHA programs don't experience this at all. And then there are some where, it just, wreaks havoc with budgets. And
is that more based on the community and the opportunities and the ability to use a housing choice voucher, or?
I just don't know.
Well, we have fairly high FMRs too, right? Yeah. But just refreshing my memory, everybody in an OCAC property has a voucher, right?
No, it's a project-based voucher.
Project-based voucher, right? Everybody has a project-based voucher.
Right, they get the subsidy.
Right.
And so when there's nobody in the unit, we don't get the rent or the subsidy, unlike public housing.
Well, that's the way the market works typically.
Yeah, that's how the world.
Welcome to the real world.
So I did send the slide out for CAD, just for informational purposes. So if anyone has any questions about that, I'm happy to answer, but.
Looks like they're doing pretty good.
I second that.
All right, so unless y'all have questions, that's going to be the end of my presentation.
Do you have any questions?
So you still want to have a special meeting to formally adopt
We
this?
don't want to have to.
Based on advertising,
Got it.
giving the
Thank you.
appropriate advertising.
Thank you.
I believe that's.
Yeah, so we would have an opportunity for public questions and
Yes.
then.
Got it.
Now that I presented it, unless y'all, if y'all do have questions that y'all find after you go back through it, if you send it to them.
You know us. We'll ask if we need to,
Okay,
but thank you. Appreciate it.
thank you.
Now, I think we're ready to move to resolutions.
Jennifer's favorite part of the week.
Resolution number 11. You've gotten plenty of time to get ready.
I'll guarantee it'll be any better than it was 15 minutes ago.
I'm sure it'll be. I'm
Um,
sure it'll be.
Do my best. All right, the following three resolutions are bond inducement resolutions for properties located at 3900 Sumner Boulevard near Triangle Town Center in Raleigh. The developer for these properties is Carolina Project Equities. Two of the properties, Sumner Point and Sumner Point 2, are 90-unit senior buildings adjacent to each other. The developer is handling these properties separately to allow flexibility to phase and time the construction process along with the absorption of the senior units into the market if needed. I will present each resolution separately for approval, but they are all by the same developer and in the same location. So resolution number 11, this resolution is the inducement resolution for up to $17 million in multifamily housing revenue bonds for Sumner Point. Per state statute, RHA is the issuer for these bonds. They are non-recourse bonds. So if the developer were to default on these bonds, RHA is not financially responsible. Sumner Point is a 90-unit senior property with one 4-story elevator building, which includes 32 one-bedroom units and 78 two-bedroom units. The amenities at the property include a community room, computer center, exercise room, and several outdoor areas. All of the units within the property will serve residents at 60% AMI or below. with contract rents ranging from $1,291 to $1,537. The property is also required to accept housing choice vouchers due to the requirement of the 4% tax credits. The total project is approximately $24 million, including funding from bonds, 4% tax credits, and deferred developer fee. The developer is willing to include a preference in their tenant selection plan for RHA residents displaced due to redevelopment. This has been reviewed by RHA's legal counsel with no exceptions, and I would recommend approval. And Harrison and Mark, representing Carolina Project Equities, is on the call if there are any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions regarding resolution number 11? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, Greg Warren.
We have a motion and a second. Gwen?
Eric Braun,
Yes.
Valerie Crutchfield,
Yes.
Susan Ellinger. Susan Ellinger.
I think she's.
Sorry, I'm going to recuse. I represent the city of Raleigh.
Okay, all right. Arnie Morris,
Yes.
Greg Warren,
Yes.
Joe Whitehouse.
Yes.
Resolution number 11 has been adopted.
Resolution number 12.
All right, this resolution is the inducement resolution for up to $17 million in multifamily housing revenue bonds for Sumner Point 2. As mentioned previously, RHA is the issuer for these bonds, and since they are non-recourse, RHA is not financially responsible. Sumner Point 2 is similar in makeup to Sumner Point as discussed in Resolution 11. It is a 90-unit senior property with 1 4-story elevator building, which includes 32 one-bedroom units and 78 two-bedroom units. All the units within the property will also serve residents at 60% AMI or below, with contract rents ranging from $1,291 to $1,537. The property is also required to accept housing choice vouchers due to the requirement of the 4% tax credits. The total project is approximately $24 million, including funding for bonds, 4% tax credits, and deferred developer fee. The developer is willing to include a preference in their tenant selection plan for RHA residents displaced due to redevelopment. It's been reviewed by RHA's legal counsel with no exceptions, and I would recommend approval. And also Harrison and Mark, representing the developer, is on the call if there are any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions regarding resolution number 12?
So this is a separate seniors building from the previous resolution. Is that what I understand?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll make a motion to approve. Joe Whitehouse.
We have a motion to approve resolution number 12. Do we have a second?
Yes, I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Gwen?
All right, Eric Braun,
Yes.
Valerie Crutchfield,
Yes.
Susan, are you recused? Arnie Morris,
Yes.
Greg Warren,
Yes.
Joe Whitehouse.
Yes.
Resolution number 12 has been adopted.
We can move to resolution number 13.
All right, this resolution is the inducement resolution for up to $21 million in multifamily housing revenue bonds for the Point at Town Center 2. RHA is the issuer for these bonds. They are non-recourse bonds, so RHA is not financially responsible. The Point at Town Center 2 is a 96-unit family property with 2 4-story elevator buildings, which includes 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. All of the units within the property will serve residents at 60% AMI or below, with contract rents ranging from $1,291 to $1,768. The property is also required to accept housing choice vouchers due to a requirement of 4% tax credits. The total project is approximately $32 million, including funding from bonds, 4% tax credits, and deferred developer fee. The developer is willing to include a preference in their tenant selection plan for RHA residents displaced due to redevelopment. This has been reviewed by RHA's legal counsel with no exceptions, and I would recommend approval. And again, Harrison and Mark with Carolina Project Equities is on the call if there are any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions regarding resolution number 13? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve resolution number 13?
Motion, Greg Warren. Move to approve.
I'll second Eric Braun. Gwen?
All right, Eric Braun,
Yes.
Valerie Crutchfield,
Yes.
Arnie Morris,
Yes.
Greg Warren,
Yes.
Joe Whitehouse.
Yes.
Resolution number 13 has been adopted.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, Susan Ellinger, did you recuse yourself on the last two resolutions?
He dropped off.
Oh.
Yeah, she's not on.
I guess you did recuse.
So at this point, we're gonna pause the meeting of the Housing Authority for, to go into the meeting for the OCAC board. And for anybody watching that's not part of this, may be confusing. The same board, we have a mirror board. So the board for OCAC is also the board for the Raleigh Housing Authority. We have a formal meeting that we're gonna move into for the OCAC board meeting. Upon completion of that meeting, we're gonna return for a closed session that will not be open to the public. So that technically the end of the business meeting for the Housing Authority is done now. So anybody watching, you're welcome to stay for the OCAC board meeting. So with that, I will turn it over to Greg Warren to start us off.
All right, I'll call to order the meeting of the Oak City Affordable Housing Communities, Inc. This is their regular board meeting of March 27. And ask that we do a roll call.
Okay, Eric Braun,
Here.
Valerie Crutchfield,
Here.
Susan Ellinger is not on. Arnie Morris,
Here.
Fati Matisia is not on. Greg Warren,
Here.
Joe Whitehouse.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Great. First item on the agenda is consent agenda, and like all consent agendas, they're considered routine and may be enacted in one motion in second. So I'd invite someone to do so.
I would move approval of the consent agenda.
Second, Joe Whitehouse.
Right,
Okay.
Eric Braun,
Yes.
Valerie Crutchfield,
Yes.
Arnie Morris,
Yes.
Greg Warren,
Yes.
Joe Whitehouse.
Yes.
The consent agenda's been adopted.
Okay, under new business, we have resolution number 1, and I must admit that I think I failed to pull that into my computer. So I don't have that in front of me, but it basically is a budget revision for affordable units at Meadow Ridge, Valley Brook, Terrace Park, and Berkshire, and general activity for OCAC for the fiscal year ending March 31, 2025.
Okay.
And Liz, are you going to run through that?
Run it fast. It was, the data was actually in this slide that we just presented in the other board meeting, but just to point out, the main change was the total income. We are asking for a decrease of 224,000, and that was related to the Choice Mobility voucher being issued and due to the number of vacancies. Expenses only changed by 14,000, so not really much to present on that. So overall, our projected income was budgeted at 569,972, and we're reducing that because of the reduction in income to 331,272. And if there are no further questions, I would recommend approval.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
Joe Whitehouse makes a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Great. Okay, we got a motion and a second.
Eric Braun,
Yes.
Valerie Crutchfield,
Yes.
Arnie Morris,
Yes.
Greg Warren,
Yes.
Joe Whitehouse.
Yes.
Yes.
Resolution number 1 has been adopted.
Okay, item number 2 for new business is resolution number 2, which is ICC contributions. And I believe Laura is going to take this and tell us what ICC is.
Yes, so we have budget at Oak City Affordable Communities that includes fiscal year allocations for tenant participation and tenant opportunities. So tenant participation funds can be used for any activities that improve residents' quality of life, self-help initiatives, creating positive living environment, training opportunities, more. And HUD has determined the funding amounts for tenant participation funds through PIH notice 2021-16. Federal regs require that $25 be allotted per occupied unit, and that goes directly to support tenant participation activities, with $15 going to provide services directly to residents, supporting the resident council activities. The $10 remaining will be used by OCAC to support tenant participation activities. The ICC is the Intercommunity Council, and it is included in OCAC's organizational structure, and it is comprised of the elected resident council presidents and acts as the jurisdiction-wide resident organization. ICC requires financial assistance to help offset the expenses and to address the needs of OCAC residents. There is a memorandum of agreement in place that provides 20% of the tenant participation funding for OCAC to the ICC. Based on this information, tenant participation funds in the amount of $2,880 should be made available for resident participation activities. $2,304 of that will go directly to the resident councils, and $576 will go to the ICC. In order to do that, staff is seeking authorization to make the funding for the 2025-2026 fiscal year accessible for resident activities beginning April 1st. And we need to execute agreements with OCAC's duly elected resident councils in order to meet our HUD requirements. I am happy to answer questions and recommend approval.
So these properties are still regulated by HUD insofar as the tenant.
Yes,
Township.
that they were grandfathered in as part of the RAG conversion that HUD still allows for them to receive the funds.
Okay, so we have a lot of other HUD requirements on these properties?
I don't think so, but we couldn't do the transition and say, now you can't have a resident council. They had that stipulation.
Okay, all right, fine. All right, so we've got a resolution before us. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved, Eric Braun.
Second?
Second.
Do we have?
Second,
that
Joe
Joe?
Whitehouse. Yep.
No.
All right, Eric Braun,
Yes.
Valerie Crutchfield,
Yes.
Arnie Morris,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Joe Whitehouse.
Yes.
Resolution number 2 has been adopted.
Okay, without objection, we will adjourn the OCAC board meeting, and I guess we'll ask everybody, thank you for your participation and have a small group.
Yes. So at this point, I would entertain a motion in a second to move into closed session for the purpose of discussion, discussing 2 personnel matters. The board's authority to discuss these matters in closed session on North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A6. Due to the nature of this discussion, no statement will be made once the board reconvenes into open session. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Greg Warren.
Second, Joe Whitehouse.
Got a motion and a second, Glenn? Make sure that everyone on the Zoom has been,
Yeah. Do you want me to take a roll to go into closed session?
yes,
Eric Braun,
yes.
Valerie Crutchfield,
Yes.
Susan Ellinger, no, she's not on, sorry. Arnie Morris,
Yes.
Greg Warren,
Yes.
Joe Whitehouse.
Yes.
All right, we're moving into executive session.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, you got, just looking at the Zoom, there's Chris Wittenhill still on, Jay Farrell still on, and a Zoom user. I'm not sure who that is.
I think Glenn is
I'm
gonna
removing.
take care of them.
Okay.
Thank you for helping us, appreciate that.
All right, do you want me to end or do you want me to stay on, Eric?
I'd like you to stay on,
All right,
please.
All right, so
sure.
you want me out of the room? Okay.
So
I'll text you if that's okay. If-
No.
is this being recorded or are we gonna
So I'm gonna.
stop the recording?
I think, yeah, I would stop the recording and I'll take notes on anything that you want noted.